My name is Sarah Martinez, and 6 months ago, I thought I was just another struggling college graduate drowning in student loans in Denver, Colorado. I was working double shifts at a downtown coffee shop, barely making ends meet, when everything changed with one phone call that would turn my family upside down. It was a Tuesday morning in October when my phone buzzed while I was serving my 100th latte of the day. The caller ID showed an unknown number, and normally I'd let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Miss Martinez? This is Harold Whitfield from Whitfield & Associates law firm. I'm calling regarding your grandmother, Elena Martinez. My heart stopped. Grandma Elena had been in the hospital for weeks, and we all knew her time was limited. She was 93, sharp as a tack until the very end, but her body was finally giving out. I'm afraid I have difficult news, Mr. Whitfield continued. Your grandmother passed away peacefully yesterday evening. However, I'm also calling because you've been named as a beneficiary in her will. Can you come to my office this Friday at 2 p.m.? The next few days were a blur of funeral arrangements, family gatherings, and tears. Grandma Elena had been the matriarch of our family, the woman who held everyone together with her fierce love and homemade empanadas. She'd immigrated from Mexico in the 1950s, with nothing but determination and dreams, eventually building a small but successful chain of authentic Mexican restaurants across Denver. What I didn't expect was the family drama that would explode at her funeral. My cousin Marcus, Uncle Roberto's son, kept shooting me suspicious glances during the service. He'd always been the golden child, the first to graduate college, the one with the fancy job at a tech company, the one who never forgot to call Grandma on Sundays. I'd always felt like the family disappointment in comparison. After the burial, as we gathered at Grandma's house for the traditional post-funeral meal, I overheard Marcus talking to his father in hushed tones near the kitchen. I'm telling you, Dad, she promised me the restaurants. She said I had the business sense to run them properly. Sarah can barely manage her own life, let alone a business empire. Uncle Roberto nodded gravely. Don't worry, mijo. We'll figure this out. Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly at the end. Everyone knows you're the logical choice. My stomach twisted. I'd never expected to inherit anything significant from Grandma Elena. I loved her dearly, but Marcus was right. He was the successful one, the responsible one. What could she possibly have left me? Friday arrived faster than I wanted. I sat in Mr. Whitfield's office, an imposing room filled with law books and the smell of aged leather. Across from me sat Marcus, Uncle Roberto, Aunt Carmen, and my mother, Rosa. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Mr. Whitfield, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes, cleared his throat and opened a thick folder. Thank you all for coming. Elena Martinez left very specific instructions regarding her estate, and I must say, in my 40 years of practice, I've never seen anything quite like this. He pulled out several documents and adjusted his reading glasses. To my beloved granddaughter, Sarah Elena Martinez, he began reading. I leave the entirety of my restaurant chain, Elena's Kitchen, including all 6 locations, the central kitchen facility, all equipment, recipes, and associated real estate. The room erupted. That's impossible, Marcus shot to his feet. She promised me those restaurants. Sarah doesn't know the first thing about running a business. Uncle Roberto was equally outraged. Harold, there must be some mistake. Elena talked to me just last month about Marcus taking over the family business. My mother looked stunned, while Aunt Carmen started crying. Whether from joy or shock, I couldn't tell. Mr. Whitfield held up his hand for silence. Please, let me continue. There's more. However, he continued reading, this inheritance comes with specific conditions. Sarah must actively manage the restaurants for a minimum of 2 years, maintaining current employment levels and the established quality standards. She cannot sell, transfer, or significantly alter the business operations during this period without unanimous family consent. Marcus's face turned red. 2 years? She'll run everything into the ground in 2 months. Harold, we need to contest this will. Grandma wasn't in her right mind. Actually, Mr. Rodriguez, Mr. Whitfield said calmly, your grandmother was very much in her right mind. She came to me 6 months ago to update her will, and she was quite lucid about her decisions. She even recorded a video message explaining her choices. He reached for a laptop and turned it toward us. Suddenly, there was Grandma Elena on the screen, sitting in this very office, looking directly at the camera with those sharp, dark eyes that missed nothing. My dear family, her recorded voice filled the room, and I felt tears spring to my eyes. If you're watching this, then I've joined your grandfather in heaven, and you're probably wondering why I made the choices I did. She paused, and I could see the hint of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Marcus, mijo, you have your own successful career, and I'm so proud of you. But Sarah, my little Sarah has struggled, and struggle builds character. She reminds me of myself when I first came to this country with nothing but dreams and determination. Marcus scoffed, but Grandma Elena's voice continued. Sarah, you think you're not capable, but I see something in you that you don't see in yourself yet. You have my fighting spirit, my creativity, and most importantly, my heart for people. The restaurants aren't just businesses. They're places where families gather, where traditions live, where love is served with every meal. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Grandma's voice. I know some of you will be upset by my decision, and that's okay. But I have faith that Sarah will surprise you all, including herself. The video ended, leaving us all in stunned silence. Mr. Whitfield closed the laptop and looked around the room. Are there any questions about the terms of the will? Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This isn't over. Come on, Dad. We're getting our own lawyer. As they stormed out, Uncle Roberto paused at the door and looked back at me with a mixture of disappointment and anger. You better not destroy everything she built, Sarah. That woman's legacy deserves better than your inexperience. After they left, I sat in the quiet office, trying to process what had just happened. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. Mija, your grandmother saw something special in you. Maybe it's time you started seeing it too. Mr. Whitfield handed me a thick envelope. These are all the documents you'll need. Business licenses, property deeds, financial records. There's also a letter she wrote specifically for you. That night, in my tiny studio apartment, I opened Grandma's letter with shaking hands. Her familiar handwriting filled 3 pages, but one paragraph stood out. My dearest Sarah, I know you're scared right now, and that's normal. But remember, I didn't leave you the restaurants because I thought it would be easy for you. I left them to you because I knew it would make you extraordinary. The real treasure isn't the business itself. It's what you'll become by rising to meet this challenge. Trust yourself, Mija. And remember, I hid something special for you. When things get tough, and they will, look for the place where our family recipes began. As I fell asleep that night, I had no idea that my biggest challenge wasn't going to be learning how to run 6 restaurants. It was going to be fighting off my own family's attempts to take them away from me. But Grandma Elena was right about one thing. I was about to discover just how much fight I had in me. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I was living someone else's life. I owned 6 successful restaurants, but I couldn't even balance my own checkbook properly. The weight of responsibility felt crushing as I drove to the main Elena's Kitchen location on Colfax Avenue. The restaurant was already bustling with the breakfast crowd when I arrived. Maria Gonzalez, who'd been Grandma's assistant manager for 15 years, greeted me with a warm hug and eyes red from crying. Senora Elena spoke about you all the time, she said in accented English. She always said you had her corazon, her heart. Don't let anyone tell you different. Over the next few hours, Maria walked me through the daily operations. I was overwhelmed by everything: inventory management, staff scheduling, vendor relationships, health department regulations. It was like drinking from a fire hose. Don't worry, Mija, Maria said, noticing my panic. Senora Elena didn't learn this overnight either. She used to tell me stories about her first year: burned food, angry customers, nights spent crying over the books. But look what she built. That afternoon, I decided to visit each of the 6 locations to introduce myself to the staff. At the 3rd restaurant, in the trendy Highland neighborhood, I encountered my first real challenge. The manager, David Hernandez, seemed skeptical from the moment I walked in. So you're the new owner? He asked, looking me up and down with obvious doubt. No offense, but some of us are wondering if you're really ready for this. These restaurants employ 42 people total. That's 42 families depending on steady paychecks. I understood his concern, but it stung nonetheless. I know I have a lot to learn, David, but I'm committed to keeping everyone employed and maintaining the standards Grandma Elena set. He nodded politely, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. That evening, I was going through financial reports at the main restaurant when my phone rang. It was my cousin Elena, Marcus's younger sister, and unlike her brother, she'd always been kind to me. "Sarah, I wanted to warn you about something," she said in a low voice. "Marcus has been calling family members all day, trying to get people to support him in contesting the will." My heart sank. "What's he saying?" "He's telling everyone that Grandma Elena wasn't thinking clearly, that you'll destroy the family business, that the restaurants will be closed within 6 months. He's even suggested that you somehow manipulated her into changing the will." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "Elena, you know that's not true. I barely even knew about the inheritance until yesterday." "I believe you, Prima, but Marcus can be very convincing. He's already got Uncle Miguel and Aunt Rosa on his side. They're meeting with a lawyer tomorrow." After hanging up, I sat alone in the empty restaurant, surrounded by photos of our family spanning decades. There were pictures of Grandma Elena as a young woman, proudly standing in front of her first tiny restaurant. Photos of family celebrations, baptisms, graduations, all held in these sacred spaces she'd created. I thought about her letter and the cryptic clue she'd left. "Look for the place where our family recipes began." I'd been too overwhelmed to really think about it, but now I was curious. I started in the kitchen, looking through every cabinet and drawer. In the walk-in cooler, behind boxes of ingredients, I found an old wooden chest I'd never noticed before. It was locked, but Maria had left a ring of keys, and after trying several, one fit. Inside the chest were dozens of handwritten recipe cards, some so old the ink had faded to brown. But underneath the recipes, I found something unexpected, a thick manila envelope marked "For Sarah's Eyes Only." Inside were legal documents I didn't fully understand, business correspondence, and what appeared to be contracts. At the bottom was another letter from Grandma Elena. "If you're reading this, then the vultures have started circling, just as I expected they would. Don't worry, mija. I planned for this too. These documents contain information about certain family members that they probably don't want made public. I hope you never have to use them, but if Marcus and Roberto try to destroy what we've built, well, your grandmother didn't survive as a woman business owner in the 1960s by being naive." My hands were shaking as I read through the documents. There were records of Marcus borrowing money from Grandma Elena's personal accounts 3 years ago, money he'd never repaid. There were emails between Uncle Roberto and a developer discussing plans to sell the restaurant properties for condominium development. Most shocking of all, there were bank records showing that both Marcus and Uncle Roberto had been systematically overcharging the restaurants for consulting services that appeared to be completely fictional. They'd been embezzling from Grandma Elena for years. The next morning, I was at the Lakewood location helping with the lunch prep when Marcus showed up with Uncle Roberto and a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as their attorney, James Morrison. "Sarah, we need to talk," Marcus said, his voice cold and formal. "We're here to make you a reasonable offer." Mr. Morrison opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. "Miss Martinez, my clients are prepared to purchase the restaurant chain from you for fair market value. This would resolve any questions about your grandmother's mental state when she made her will, and it would ensure that the family business remains in experienced hands." I looked at the offer. It was for $800,000, which sounded like a fortune to someone with my background, but I suspected it was far below the actual value of 6 profitable restaurants plus prime real estate. "I need time to think about this," I said. Marcus leaned forward, his expression intense. "Sarah, be reasonable. You're in over your head. You've never run a business, never managed employees, never dealt with vendors and suppliers. You're going to run these restaurants into the ground, and then everyone loses. The employees, the family, the community that depends on these places." "Your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly," Uncle Roberto added. "She was old, sick, probably medicated. No rational person would leave a multi-million-dollar business to someone with no experience." Their lawyer nodded sympathetically. "Miss Martinez, I've seen situations like this before. Family members sometimes make emotional decisions rather than practical ones. This offer protects everyone involved." I thought about the documents hidden in my purse, the evidence of their embezzlement. My instinct was to confront them immediately, but something made me hold back. "I'll give you my answer by Friday," I said. After they left, Maria approached me with concern written all over her face. "Mija, you're not really thinking of selling, are you? Your grandmother trusted you with her life's work." "I don't know what I'm thinking anymore, Maria. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am in over my head. She grabbed my hands and looked me directly in the eyes. Listen to me, Sarah. I worked for your grandmother for 15 years. I saw her fight off developers, corrupt health inspectors, suppliers who tried to cheat her because she was a woman. She was tough as nails, but she was also fair and kind. You have that same strength. I can see it. That evening, I called Mr. Whitfield and asked him to meet me at his office. I showed him the documents I'd found, and his expression grew increasingly serious as he read through them. Sarah, this changes everything. Your uncle and cousin have been defrauding the business for years. These consulting fees alone amount to over $150,000. And these emails about selling the properties, your grandmother specifically structured the will to prevent exactly this kind of thing. What do you mean? She included a clause that I didn't mention in front of the family. If anyone contests the will or attempts to force you to sell the business through legal pressure, they forfeit any future claim to the estate and become liable for restitution of any funds they may have taken inappropriately. My mind was reeling. She knew they were stealing from her? Your grandmother was a sharp businesswoman, Sarah. She suspected something was wrong with the books, but she couldn't prove it until recently. That's why she updated her will, to protect the business and to protect you. I spent that night walking through downtown Denver, trying to clear my head. The city was alive with lights and activity, and I found myself thinking about all the families who had gathered around tables in Grandma Elena's restaurants over the years. How many first dates, anniversary dinners, birthday celebrations, and family reunions had happened in those warm, welcoming spaces. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called Marcus and asked him to meet me at the main restaurant, along with Uncle Roberto and their lawyer. When they arrived, they were clearly expecting me to accept their offer. I've made my decision, I said, standing behind the hostess station where Grandma Elena had greeted customers for decades. I'm not selling. Marcus's face darkened. Sarah, you're making a huge mistake. Actually, Marcus, I think you're the one who's made mistakes. Big ones. I slid copies of the embezzlement evidence across the table. The color drained from both Marcus's and Uncle Roberto's faces. What is this? Their lawyer asked, picking up the documents. Evidence that my uncle and cousin have been stealing from my grandmother for years. Fake consulting fees, overcharging for services, and discussing selling family property behind her back. Marcus stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. Those documents are fake. You're making this up. The bank records are real, Marcus. The email trail is real, and now I understand why Grandma Elena really changed her will. Uncle Roberto grabbed Marcus's arm. We're leaving. Come on. But their lawyer was still studying the papers, his expression growing increasingly concerned. Gentlemen, if these documents are authentic, you could be facing serious legal consequences. I think we need to discuss this privately. As they hurried out, Marcus turned back to me with anger blazing in his eyes. This isn't over, Sarah. Family doesn't do this to family. You're right, I replied. Family doesn't steal from each other either. After they left, I sat alone in the restaurant, feeling both victorious and terrified. I'd stood up to them, but now the real work began. I had to prove that Grandma Elena's faith in me wasn't misplaced. I had to show everyone, including myself, that I could do this. The weeks following my confrontation with Marcus and Uncle Roberto were the hardest of my life. Running 6 restaurants simultaneously was like juggling flaming torches while riding a unicycle. One wrong move, and everything would come crashing down. I threw myself into learning every aspect of the business. I arrived at 5 a.m. to help with breakfast prep, stayed until midnight balancing books, and spent my weekends visiting food suppliers and studying competitor menus. My old life as a barista seemed like a distant memory. The first major crisis hit 3 weeks later. I was at the Thornton location, learning how to handle the morning rush, when my phone started buzzing with urgent calls. David Hernandez from the Highland restaurant was practically shouting when I picked up. Sarah, you need to get down here immediately. The health inspector is here and he's finding violations everywhere. He's threatening to shut us down. My blood ran cold. A health department closure could destroy a restaurant's reputation overnight. I raced across town, my heart pounding as I imagined everything Grandma Elena had built crumbling because of my inexperience. When I arrived, Inspector Rodriguez was documenting what appeared to be serious violations: improper food storage temperatures, inadequate hand-washing facilities, and expired ingredients in the walk-in cooler. "Ma'am, are you the owner?" he asked, looking up from his clipboard with a stern expression. Yes, I'm Sarah Martinez. What seems to be the problem? He showed me his findings, and I felt sick to my stomach. These weren't minor infractions. They were serious health code violations that could genuinely make people sick. I'm sorry, but I have to shut down this location immediately. You can reopen once all violations are corrected, and we conduct a follow-up inspection. As he posted the closure notice on the front door, I noticed something odd. David, who should have been devastated by this disaster, seemed almost relieved. He was also avoiding eye contact with me. That evening, I called Maria and asked her to meet me at the closed Highland location. Together, we went through everything the inspector had cited. This doesn't make sense, Maria said, checking the refrigeration logs. These temperatures were fine yesterday. And look at these expired ingredients. David ordered them. He knows better than to order this much product without checking rotation dates. A horrible suspicion was forming in my mind. Maria, do you think someone could have sabotaged us? She looked at me gravely. Mija, I've been in this business a long time. Sometimes people do desperate things when they feel threatened. I spent the next 2 days working 18-hour shifts to correct every violation. I hired a professional cleaning crew, replaced all questionable ingredients, fixed the hand washing station, and had all equipment serviced. It cost me $8,000 I couldn't really afford, but we passed the re-inspection. However, the damage to our reputation was significant. Online reviews started appearing, warning people about the health code violations at Elena's Kitchen. Our daily customer count dropped by 30% almost overnight. I was sitting in my apartment that Friday evening, exhausted and demoralized, when my phone rang. It was Elena, Marcus's sister. Sarah, I need to tell you something. I feel horrible about this. What is it? It's about the health department inspection. Marcus has been bragging to family members about how he taught you a lesson. He knows the inspector. They went to high school together. Marcus paid David to create those violations deliberately. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not only had Marcus tried to steal the restaurants, but he'd actively sabotaged one to make me fail. Elena, are you sure about this? I heard him talking to Dad about it. He said if he couldn't have the restaurants, he'd make sure you failed so spectacularly that the family would force you to sell. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I should have warned you sooner. After hanging up, I felt a rage unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But alongside the anger was something else, a steely determination that reminded me of Grandma Elena's stories about fighting off bullies and competitors in her early days. I decided it was time to play hardball. The next Monday, I fired David Hernandez for cause and hired a new manager, Carmen Rodriguez, an experienced restaurant professional who came highly recommended. I also installed security cameras in all 6 locations and upgraded our point-of-sale systems to better track inventory and prevent theft. But my biggest move was yet to come. I scheduled a family meeting for the following Sunday, sending invitations to every relative who had been involved in questioning the inheritance. The meeting would be held at the original Elena's Kitchen location, where Grandma Elena had started her empire. When they arrived, Marcus, Uncle Roberto, Aunt Carmen, Uncle Miguel, and several cousins, I was waiting for them with Mr. Whitfield and a stack of documents. Thank you all for coming, I began, standing in front of the family photo wall that told the story of our shared history. I wanted to discuss the future of Elena's Kitchen and address some recent challenges. Marcus crossed his arms defensively. If you called us here to gloat about keeping the restaurants, you're wasting our time. Actually, Marcus, I called you here because I know you paid David Hernandez to sabotage the Highland location. The room went dead silent. Marcus's face turned white, then red. That's a serious accusation, Sarah. I hope you have proof. I nodded to Mr. Whitfield, who opened his briefcase and pulled out several documents. We have David's signed confession, the lawyer said calmly. When faced with potential criminal charges for food tampering and health code fraud, he decided to cooperate fully. He's provided detailed information about how you orchestrated the sabotage, including bank records showing the payment you made to him. Marcus shot to his feet. That's impossible. David wouldn't. He also provided text messages between you two discussing the plan, I continued, including your promise to hire him at double his current salary once you took over the restaurants. Uncle Roberto looked horrified. Marcus, please tell me this isn't true. Marcus's silence was answer enough. I pulled out another set of documents. But that's not all. Mr. Whitfield has prepared a comprehensive report on the embezzlement activities we discovered. Marcus, Uncle Roberto, You've stolen over $200,000 from Grandma Elena over the past 4 years. Now wait just a minute, Uncle Roberto started. The evidence is overwhelming, Mr. Whitfield interrupted. Fraudulent consulting fees, inflated supplier invoices, personal expenses charged to business accounts. Your grandmother suspected something was wrong, which is why she had me conduct a forensic audit of the books before she updated her will. I looked around the room at my family members, some shocked, some guilty, some angry. Here's what's going to happen, I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice. Marcus and Uncle Roberto, you're going to repay every penny you stole with interest. You're also going to stay away from my restaurants and my employees. If you continue to interfere with my business or spread lies about me, I'll file criminal charges. Marcus looked like he wanted to say something, but their family lawyer, who had quietly reviewed our evidence, was shaking his head vigorously. As for the rest of you, I continued, you're all welcome to be part of Elena's Kitchen's future, but only if you support what I'm trying to build here. Grandma Elena left me these restaurants because she believed I could honor her legacy while also growing it into something even better. Aunt Carmen, who had been silent throughout the meeting, suddenly spoke up. Sarah, Mija, I owe you an apology. We let Marcus convince us that you couldn't handle this responsibility, but look at what you've accomplished in just a few weeks. You've stood up to bullies, fixed problems, and protected your employees. Elena would be so proud. One by one, other family members began to speak up, some offering apologies, others pledging their support. Even Uncle Miguel, who had initially sided with Marcus, admitted that my grandmother's choice was looking wiser every day. Marcus and Uncle Roberto left without saying goodbye, but I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time since inheriting the restaurants, I felt like I might actually be able to do this. Over the next month, business began to recover. The health department incident had actually motivated me to implement better systems and training, making all our locations safer and more efficient. Customer reviews started improving, and we even began attracting new patrons who were curious about the young woman who saved the family business. But my real breakthrough came when I decided to honor Grandma Elena's memory in a special way. I found her original recipe notebook, the one she'd brought with her from Mexico 70 years ago. The pages were yellowed and fragile, but the recipes were still clearly written in her careful handwriting. Many of them were dishes we'd never served at the restaurants, family recipes that had been too personal, too precious to commercialize. I decided to create a special Elena's Heritage menu featuring these traditional recipes, with proceeds going to a scholarship fund for young Latina entrepreneurs. The menu launch became a community event, with local media coverage and lines of customers eager to taste authentic dishes that had been passed down through generations. The Heritage menu was such a success that we had to expand it to all 6 locations. More importantly, it reminded me why Grandma Elena had built these restaurants in the first place, not just to make money, but to preserve culture, strengthen community, and create gathering places where families could connect with their roots. As I stood in the main restaurant one evening, watching families laugh and share meals around tables that had witnessed decades of celebrations, I finally understood what Grandma Elena had seen in me. It wasn't that I was the most qualified or experienced person to run her business. It was that I understood in my heart what the business was really about. It was about family, tradition, community, and the belief that food could bring people together across all the divisions that might otherwise separate them. I was ready for the final chapter of this journey. 6 months had passed since I'd inherited Elena's Kitchen, and the transformation, both in the restaurants and in myself, was remarkable. What had started as a desperate struggle to keep the business afloat had evolved into something much more meaningful, the creation of a true community institution. The Heritage menu had been such a success that food bloggers and culinary magazines began featuring our story. Denver's Hidden Gem, How a Young Woman Saved Her Grandmother's Legacy, read the headline in 5280 magazine. The article brought tourists from across the country, eager to taste authentic Mexican cuisine prepared from century-old family recipes. But the real victory wasn't in the press coverage or increased revenue. It was in watching my employees thrive under better management and seeing families create new memories in the spaces Grandma Elena had built. The morning everything came full circle started like any other Tuesday. I was at the original location, reviewing inventory reports with Maria, when Mr. Whitfield called with unexpected news. "Sarah, I just received some interesting documents you should see. Can you come to my office this afternoon? When I arrived, he had a thick folder waiting on his desk, along with a familiar manila envelope. This arrived from your grandmother's safety deposit box, he explained. Apparently, she left instructions that it should only be given to you after you'd successfully operated the restaurants for 6 months. Inside the envelope was a letter in Grandma Elena's handwriting, along with several official-looking documents. My dearest Sarah, the letter began, if you're reading this, then you've proven what I always knew, that you have the strength, wisdom, and heart to carry on our family's legacy. But now it's time for the final surprise. My hands were shaking as I continued reading. The secret clause I mentioned isn't in the will, it's in these documents. When I first bought the land for our restaurants, I purchased much more property than was needed for the business. Over the years, as Denver grew and developed, that land became extremely valuable. Sarah, you don't just own 6 restaurants, you own 12 acres of prime Denver real estate worth over $8 million. I nearly dropped the letter. $8 million? But here's the important part, Mija. This land is your security, your foundation for the future. With this value backing you, you can expand the business, create opportunities for other young entrepreneurs, or simply know that you'll never have to worry about financial security again. The choice is yours, but choose wisely. Mr. Whitfield was smiling as he watched me read. Your grandmother purchased the land in the 1960s for a few $1,000s per acre. Today, with Denver's growth and development, it's some of the most valuable commercial property in the city. I looked at the property surveys and appraisals. The land our restaurant sat on was worth a fortune. But more than that, it represented decades of my grandmother's faith in the future. There's more, Mr. Whitfield continued. She also set up a trust fund for you, separate from the restaurant inheritance. It's been growing with compound interest for 10 years. The current balance is $1.2 million. I stared at him in shock. I don't understand. Why didn't she tell me about any of this before? Because she wanted you to prove yourself first. She wanted you to fight for the business, to grow into the person she knew you could become. If you'd known about the financial security from the beginning, you might not have developed the skills and confidence you needed. As I drove back to the restaurant, my mind was racing. I'd gone from being a struggling barista to a multi-millionaire in 6 months. But more importantly, I'd discovered capabilities I never knew I had. That evening, I called a staff meeting at the main restaurant. All our managers and senior employees gathered around the tables where so many family meetings had taken place over the years. I have some news to share with all of you, I began, looking at the faces of people who had become like family to me. Elena's Kitchen is going to expand. The room buzzed with excitement. But we're not just opening more restaurants, we're creating something new. The Elena Martinez Foundation for Culinary Arts and Entrepreneurship. We're going to provide scholarships, business training, and mentorship for young people who want to start their own food businesses. Maria started crying, happy tears this time. Additionally, we're going to convert the vacant lot next to this location into a community garden and outdoor event space. It will be a place where local families can grow their own vegetables, where we can hold cultural festivals, and where children can learn about nutrition and cooking. Carmen Rodriguez, our new Highland location manager, raised her hand. Sarah, this sounds wonderful, but can we afford all this? I smiled, thinking about the documents in my purse and the security they represented. Let's just say Grandma Elena left us with more resources than we initially realized. We're going to be just fine. Over the next few months, the transformation continued. We broke ground on the community garden, established the first round of scholarship recipients, and began planning our 7th restaurant location. This one designed specifically as a training facility for young entrepreneurs. The local news picked up our story again, this time focusing on how we were giving back to the community. From inheritance drama to community leader, the Elena's Kitchen story aired on Channel 7, featuring interviews with scholarship recipients and families who used our community garden. But the moment that meant the most to me came on a busy Saturday evening in December. I was working the floor at the original location when I noticed a familiar figure at table 12, Marcus, sitting alone with a cup of coffee and looking uncomfortable. I walked over to his table, my heart racing with uncertainty. Marcus, Sarah. He looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before, humility mixed with genuine remorse. I was hoping we could talk. I sat down across from him, remembering all the arguments and confrontations we'd had in this very restaurant. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "Actually, I owe you several apologies. What I did, the sabotage, the embezzlement, trying to turn the family against you, it was wrong. All of it." I studied his face, looking for signs of deception, but all I saw was genuine regret. "I was jealous," he continued. "I'd worked so hard to be the perfect grandson, the successful one, the responsible one. When Grandma Elena chose you instead of me, it felt like everything I'd done meant nothing. Marcus, your success does mean something. But Grandma Elena's restaurants were never about rewarding the most successful person. They were about preserving something important for the next generation." He nodded slowly. "I can see that now. And I can see what you've built here. The community programs, the scholarships, the way you've brought the family back together. It's exactly what she would have wanted." We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the sounds of families enjoying their meals around us. "I've been working with a therapist," Marcus said eventually, "trying to understand why I reacted the way I did, and I've been following the foundation's work. Sarah, what you're doing is incredible. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This is a check for the money I took, plus interest. And there's something else." Marcus handed me a second envelope. "It's a business proposal. I'd like to contribute to the foundation, not as a way to buy my way back into the family's good graces, but because I believe in what you're doing." I opened the proposal and was shocked to see detailed plans for a technology platform that would help small food businesses manage their operations more efficiently. It was exactly the kind of innovative thinking that could help our scholarship recipients succeed. "You don't have to answer now," he said, standing up. "Just think about it. And Sarah, Grandma Elena was right about you. You were always the one with her heart." After he left, I sat at that table for a long time, thinking about forgiveness, family, and the unexpected ways people can change and grow. 3 weeks later, I stood on the stage at the Denver Convention Center, addressing a crowd of over 500 people at the inaugural Elena Martinez Foundation Gala. In the audience, I could see faces that told the story of my journey. Maria, who had become my closest advisor, Carmen and the other managers who had helped rebuild our reputation, Mr. Whitfield, who had guided me through the legal complexities, and yes, even Marcus, who was now volunteering his tech expertise to help our scholarship recipients. "When my grandmother, Elena Martinez, first came to Denver in 1952, I said into the microphone, she had nothing but a suitcase full of family recipes and a dream of creating something lasting for her family. Tonight, we celebrate not just her legacy, but the beginning of something new." I gestured to the large screen behind me, which showed photos of our scholarship recipients, young entrepreneurs who were opening food trucks, catering businesses, and small restaurants across Colorado. This year, the Elena Martinez Foundation provided full scholarships to 12 aspiring food entrepreneurs. We helped 17 families start community gardens in their neighborhoods. We trained over 100 young people in basic business skills, and we're just getting started. The applause was thunderous, but what moved me most was seeing the tears in people's eyes, people who understood that this was about more than just business success. It was about creating opportunities, preserving culture, and building stronger communities. After the gala, I drove to the original Elena's Kitchen location. It was closed for the evening, but I had keys, of course. I let myself in and walked through the quiet dining room, stopping at the family photo wall. There, in the center, was the photo that meant the most to me. Grandma Elena on opening day in 1955, standing proudly in front of her first restaurant with her husband by her side. She looked so young, so hopeful, so determined to make her dreams come true. I thought about the letter she'd left me, the one that had started this whole journey. "Trust yourself, mija. And remember, I hid something special for you." The secret hadn't been the documents, or the property values, or even the trust fund. The secret had been me, the person I was capable of becoming when I stopped doubting myself and started believing in the dreams someone else had planted in my heart. My phone buzzed with a text message from my mother. "Mija, I watched your speech online. Your grandmother would be so proud, but I think she already knew what you would become. Love you." As I locked up the restaurant and headed home, I realized that the story wasn't really over. It was just beginning. Tomorrow, there would be new challenges, new opportunities, new dreams to pursue. The foundation would grow, the restaurants would continue to serve families, and somewhere, a young person with nothing but determination and a dream would get the chance to build something extraordinary. That's what Grandma Elena had really left me. Not just a business or financial security, but the knowledge that with courage, persistence, and faith in yourself, you can transform not just your own life, but the lives of everyone around you. The secret clause hadn't been hidden in legal documents after all. It had been written in my heart all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And now, as I drove through the Denver streets, where my grandmother had first chased her American dream, I understood that the most valuable inheritance isn't money or property. It's the belief that you can make a difference in the world, one family meal at a time. 6 months ago, I thought I was just a struggling barista who had inherited more than she could handle. Tonight, I knew I was exactly who I was meant to be, Elena Martinez's granddaughter, carrying forward a legacy of love, determination, and community that would outlast us all. The restaurants were just the beginning. The real treasure was what I'd discovered about myself along the way, and what I'd learned about the power of family, forgiveness, and the courage to become who you're meant to be. As I pulled into my driveway, I whispered a thank you to my grandmother. Wherever she was, she'd given me exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it. Not just the restaurants, not just the financial security, but the chance to discover that I was stronger, braver, and more capable than I'd ever imagined. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities, but tonight, I was simply grateful to be Elena Martinez's granddaughter, carrying forward a legacy that would continue to nourish families and communities for generations to come. The secret clause, it turned out, wasn't about protecting an inheritance. It was about discovering an identity, embracing a destiny, and learning that sometimes the most valuable things we inherit can't be measured in dollars. They can only be measured in the lives we touch and the dreams we help others achieve. And that was a legacy worth fighting for.